Welcome back to RFD-TV Live. We're back with our guests from Koch Agronomic Services and AGROTAIN. We have Martin Case and Greg Schwab, again reviewing research topics that are pertinent to all of our growers, gentlemen. This time of year, nitrogen management, no matter when, is always important, and you don't want to wait till the last minute. And we talked about earlier, Greg, you can't predict weather, but you have to deal with it, and it's the variable that can make the difference between the yields that will make a difference and those that won't, quite frankly.
That's for sure. You know, the old adage, if you can only predict the weather, you know.
Exactly. Well, talk about weather. We had all kinds of weather this past year and the year before, and our next video, you and I are going to go back to Iowa here, and one of our friends from USDA.
Yes, we're going to see a clip from Dr. Jerry Hatfield. It was actually at the Farm Progress Show when they recorded this clip. And he's been working with our nitrogen stabilizers in his research projects up there. And last year was really a tough year. It was wet pretty much the whole season, especially late. And he saw a lot of nitrogen stress. And so he's going to talk to us about nitrogen stress and how weather affects that nitrogen stress and how our products perform.
Very good. All right, here's Jerry Hatfield, our friend from USDA, and some thoughts again as he puts it all together, nitrogen and weather.
2010 has been a very poor year for corn from a weather standpoint because we've had excess water in the profile and since planting. We've had very intense storms that have ended up with a lot of wind damage. They've shredded the upper leaves. They basically reduced the leaf area, and anytime we reduce leaf area, it really limits the photosynthetic capacity of that plant. Well, once we begin to do that, yield becomes limited. But one of the things we began to discover is that as we can supply more nitrogen to that plant later during the grain filling period, it basically translates into yield. An example of this is what we've seen in terms of our ears of corn. This one is urea, in which all the nitrogen was available early in the season, and then this one was Super U, in which the nitrogen actually becomes available during the grain filling period. You can see there's a major difference in size. You don't have the tip back, which is indicative of lack of nitrogen during grain filling. So all of these things contribute to our understanding of just how beneficial it is to have that extra nitrogen available to that plant, particularly in years in which there's added stress put on that plant, either due to excess rain, wind damage, anything that might influence that. So all of these things contribute to help improve our yield stability over time.
Jerry Hatfield from USDA, and you know, the pictures tell 1,000 words, and we look at the corn there, and the tip really tells it all, doesn't it, Greg?
Yeah, it sure does. Dr. Hatfield has been working with two of our products, Super U and AGROTAIN Plus. Both of those products have a second inhibitor that reduces the conversion of ammonium to nitrate, which effectively reduces leaching potential and denitrification potential. When you reduce those two loss potentials, you see a lot better nitrogen nutrition in that plant.
Yeah, and Martin, we know when he, very visual again, he pulls back the leaves, but maybe some hail damage it looked like there, and so you have less leaf surface. Even with the right nitrogen like AGROTAIN, you could still maintain a good yield and a good-looking ear of corn that we had on that stalk.
Yeah, Jerry's research was very exciting. I mean, Iowa in 2010 was very wet, and the Super U and AGROTAIN Plus showed up really big time in protecting that nitrogen through those super wet periods. I mean, he had increased yields, he had reduced nitrogen loss, and the plant stayed greener longer. So it was a pretty exciting research summary.
Yeah, not just moisture, but again, the weather. When we talk about weather, the hail damage, those kinds of things also play into what AGROTAIN can bring to the table.
Well, you always want to have a healthy plant, that's for sure. No matter what the weather problem is, a healthier plant will do better than one that's not healthy.
All right, we go from Iowa, finally, staying on the weather theme, we head to Chile, Montana. In this case, Dr. Rick Engel also incorporated AGROTAIN stabilizer into his research project there, and he was aiming to answer the question, does volatility happen during cold of winter? Maybe surprised at what he found. Let's take a look.
Over the last few years, as fertilizer prices have become increasingly unpredictable, thousands of farmers have learned about the costly potential of nitrogen losses from urea into the air, known as volatility. While many have learned how to protect against those losses, saving money and boosting yields in the process, misunderstanding persists about when and how this volatility occurs, leading others to believe they are protected against nitrogen-robbing volatility when they indeed are not. That's what led Rick Engel, a soil scientist and associate professor at Montana State University, to establish his research into quantifying ammonia losses from urea applications made to no-till wheat in his state's cold climate.
This question about ammonia volatility from surface applications of urea, it's been, we've been asking it in this country for really decades. And I began working for Montana State University back in 1983, and we were asking that question back then. The issue of cold weather volatility has come up, and there's always been the belief that we can minimize losses of ammonia if we just apply urea fertilizer in cold weather. What we've been seeing actually is some very large losses, even when the soil temperatures are near freezing.
To start, Engel chose locations with some of the coolest temperatures in the continental United States, near the Canadian border in northern Montana. In each test field, he established 3 separate circular measurement plots and utilized unique custom-built instrumentation to measure ammonia losses.
Well, one of the big project objectives of this study is to look at ammonia losses, and specifically we want to know just how much of that urea that we apply to the soil surface is lost as ammonia. And to do that, we're utilizing this micrometeorological approach that I have standing behind me. It's a mast, and it's configured in the middle of these circular plots. And in the mast we have these shuttle devices or traps which are there to collect ammonia that's coming off the soil surface.
To compare this outgassing from the field in varying situations, Engel creates 3 circular plots in each location, one with urea alone, another with urea protected by AGROTAIN, and a third left unfertilized.
What we have is this system. We're working with a center mass that's behind me that's situated inside of a circular plot. And our circular plot is 20 meters in radius or 40-meter diameter circle. And what we do is we fertilize the area inside of that circular plot. We did that about a week ago. And as that urea undergoes hydrolysis, it's converted to ammonium carbonate and becomes susceptible to volatility losses. We're able to trap that ammonia with those shuttles. We're trapping the ammonia, we bring it back to the lab, we wash out the ammonia that's trapped in that shuttle. And of course, when we come out here and swap out those shuttles, we've got another set of shuttles that have been recharged to replace them. So what we're doing with this system is we're doing continuous measurements of ammonia that are coming off of those circular plots.
And the outcome? Well, while Professor Engel's research is ongoing, his first 5 campaigns have yielded very interesting results that definitively demonstrate significant losses of nitrogen from urea applied during cooler temperatures.
We've conducted 5 campaigns to date, and our losses have varied everywhere from 3 up to 40%. Our highest volatility losses have occurred where we've had damp conditions at the soil surface for prolonged periods of time, but without any accompanying rain that was sufficient to really move the fertilizer into the ground where it's no longer susceptible to volatilization. During some of my earlier campaigns, we've actually applied nitrogen fertilizer on top of a ground which had a trace of snow, and we actually have seen losses of up to 22% of nitrogen coming off as ammonia during the first week. And this is because we had prolonged damp conditions, which seemed to be very conducive to volatility losses.
In fact, in one such campaign, a comparison between the unprotected and AGROTAIN-protected plots in the crucial 2 weeks following application showed a distinct difference between the two, indicating a substantial loss of nitrogen from untreated urea and a considerable validation for the AGROTAIN.
Well, what we're finding with AGROTAIN is it's giving us 2 weeks of protection from volatilization losses. And over an 8-week campaign, we'll see a reduction in the amount of ammonia lost, or amount of urea lost as ammonia, and the protection amounts to about 60% over an untreated product.
Now that Professor Engel has completed his initial studies, he's continuing his research with more winter campaigns. In the meantime, thanks to the research of Rick Engel and Montana State University, growers in North America now have more data with which to make their fertilizing decisions in cool weather conditions. In any case, they have yet another situation in which AGROTAIN can help keep nitrogen going to their crop instead of up into thin air.
I think there's always been this belief that ammonia losses from urea will be minimized if we're applying urea when in cold temperatures. But it's been surprising that we've seen some of the largest losses when our urea applications are applied at around freezing.
Again, very interesting. Dr. Rick Engel there at the University of Montana. And let's talk a little bit about what we saw there in the cold weather environment.
Right. What Rick found, I think, would surprise most researchers across the country. The conventional wisdom is that volatilization losses are a problem when it's warm, and they're not a problem when the soil temperatures are cold. And so what he's done is really some groundbreaking research where he's done very careful measurements of volatilization in the field in those colder climates. And he's found that it's almost as much of a problem there as it is in the warmer environments.
Yeah.
And his research has just recently been published in the Better Crops for Plant Foods publication. It's a publication put out by International Plant Nutrition Institute, and it can be found online. And it's a really good summary of his research results there.
And in summary, that I would think producers would want to read, Martin, in detail, especially, and you travel that northern area as well, and I know, Greg, you do too, but again, when you talk to growers about this, about the cold weather, and the volatilization can happen anytime.
Well, that's the key thing. They put out a lot of liquid nitrogen and granular urea out early on wheat. The wheat's going out right now as we speak, and has been. And of course, they go early for corn. So anytime they're putting liquid nitrogen and urea out, they thought they were being protected just because of the cold weather. But what they found out is that if they have just a little bit of moisture, that volatility can be a serious loss to them.
Very good. We've covered a lot of ground here and a lot of territory geographically. Been to Illinois and to Iowa, Montana, and I know that you viewers are very interested in these topics related to nitrogen management as you make your plans for 2012. You may or may not be coming to Nashville for Commodity Classic to talk to Jerry or to Greg or Martin here in person, but we are going to open up our telephone lines to have you join us here live on RFD-TV right now, and we come back, we'll take your telephone calls. So here is that telephone number as you see in your screen. You can call us now, toll-free, 877-731-6733. Maybe in a cold weather climate where you have been, or wet, whatever the conditions might be. Two men here that can help answer questions to get you ready for a successful 2012. Toll-free, 877-731-6733. We'll take our last break. We'll come back, take your telephone calls, and talk more with our friends from AGROTAIN. This is RFD-TV Live on Rural America's most important network. Stay with us.